I were to run a classroom, this is what I was thinking about. We wouldn't even have desks in the classroom. Like everything would be like movement based and multisensory based. And, you know, we're going to do our first exercise, which is peanut rocking. And, you know, we're going to start the day. All right, everyone, welcome to class. Everyone sit down on the floor and start rocking like a peanut.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
like, I don't know. I just feel like that's what our kids need, and that's not what they're getting. So this is our push to get movement back into the classroom. And this is like specific functional movements that are going to be so helpful for their brains.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're happy to have you here for today's amazing episode. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica. I thought you were going to say unique.
Almost.
But this one's not unique.
It's not unique, no. Today we're talking about our top 3 primitive reflex exercises and activities in order to help promote emotional regulation in the classroom.
So first we have to talk about what primitive reflexes are, because if you've been here for a while, it's a good refresher, but also if you are new to the podcast and you've never heard about primitive reflexes, or maybe you have heard about it, but you're not really sure what they are, we want to start there.
Yeah, so we are very, very passionate about primitive reflexes. We both have continuing education and, you know, credentials in primitive reflexes. So really what this means is that we all are born with these primitive reflexes. They are developed in utero, and they help assist the birthing process. They help keep us alive and meet our milestones in that first year to 3 years when babies are born. But the trick is that these reflexes, if you think about, you know, the startle reflex or the grasp reflex, these reflexes need to go away, mature, or integrate. It's all different ways that we say they need to get out of here in order to like make way for higher level cognitive and motor patterns to develop and come in. So our job is to help kiddos and adults, really anyone and everyone, integrate those reflexes so that way they can perform optimally throughout their day.
So if these reflexes don't integrate throughout infancy and toddlerhood, we can see a whole host of challenges that might occur. And these challenges are going to be related to different areas of functioning, because each primitive reflex connects to a different part of our body and our brain. They're all connected together though. So if one primitive reflex gets stuck or retained in the brain and the body, it can likely impact another reflex in another area. And these reflexes get stuck or retained for a variety of different reasons. There's a little bit of research here and there that talks about it, but no definitive answer or like cut and dry yes or no. So we don't really need to, I think we talk about that in our full course more in depth. But the big thing to remember is that if your child does have retained primitive reflexes, it's going to impact their ability to get throughout their day, because it's going to impact their coordination, their balance, their body awareness. It's going to impact their ability to read and write at school, and it's going to impact their emotional regulation as well. And since that's the main topic of today's conversation, we'll focus on that.
Exactly. So let's break down some of those reflexes and that connection to emotional regulation. Really, the first one is a retained Moro reflex. So this is that startle reflex. And we see a lot of our kiddos and adults who have retained Moro reflexes. We often see them in that chronic state of fight or flight. We see them with higher anxiety. We see them avoid movement tasks, play-based tasks that, you know, get their feet off the ground or get their head into different positions. There's a big connection with the vestibular system here. And so we see kiddos with retained Moro reflexes in the classroom kind of withdrawn, or, you know, maybe socially uncomfortable or really hesitant to engage or participate. And they're just maybe they're eloping. Maybe they're in that fight or flight state. And instead of fighting, they're just flighting. And they're, running out of the classroom because they're uncomfortable or nervous, or they have to complete a presentation or something like that. So the first one is really the Moro reflex.
I want to start using that term, flighting.
Flighting.
The client was flighting today instead of eloping. I like it.
And then also with the Moro reflex here, we see a lot of sensory overload. We see kiddos kind of in that over responsivity side of sensory modulation disorder. And then we can see them having trouble with transitions, with tolerating, going from one activity to another, or one classroom to another, or the fire drill, or gymnasium activities, or what are the programs where all the kids go together?
Assembly.
They're having trouble with assemblies.
I don't know how I got that from
So anyways, the Moro reflex is a big one for emotional regulation here.
Yes. So in the classroom, if you have students, which you likely do, have students who are struggling with that anxiety, the social piece, the transitions, this activity that we're going to talk about next is really great for addressing a retained Moro reflex, and it's going to be great for the entire classroom because ideally you are going to use these exercises we're giving you today for the entire class for a brain break every 45 minutes or so.
I think if I were to run a classroom, this is what I was thinking about. We wouldn't even have desks in the classroom. Like everything would be like movement based and multisensory based. And, we're going to do our first exercise, which is peanut rocking. And, we're going to start the day. All right, everyone, welcome to class. Everyone sit down on the floor and start rocking like a peanut.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's what our kids need, and that's not what they're getting. So this is our push to get movement back into the classroom. And this is like specific functional movements that are going to be so helpful for their brain. So peanut rocking, they're going to hug their knees to their chest, and they're going to rock back onto their back and then up into a sitting position, making sure that their chin is tucked to their chest. They're not going to bonk it on the ground. They're not going to roll to the side. They probably will initially, but the goal is for them to be in that like rhythmic rocking up and down and up and down and up and down.
This is also called the rocking egg sometimes, and peanut rocking, call it whatever you want. The goal being, like Rachel said, that rhythmic rocking back and forth while they are maintaining that flexed position. Their knees are flexed in, they're wrapping their arms around their legs. And what you will see is kids with a retained Moro reflex, that reflex is stuck. When they lean back and go to lay back, their arms are going to open, their legs are going to extend, and that's that Moro reflex in action. So if possible, doing this, maybe you can go around, and as your students are doing the peanut rocking, you can help the ones who need a little bit of extra support to get that rhythm going. Do this for 20 to 30 seconds and then get up and crawl around the room, which I think is actually going to be the next activity for the next reflex. But combining these three exercises together will be helpful, starting with the peanut rocking.
Yes. And we just really touched on the Moro reflex today, but really any other reflex that's retained could cause emotional regulation challenges just because of how much harder kids have to work in order to work through the reflexes. So for example, the symmetrical tonic neck reflex, or the STNR, for a kiddo copying from the board, they're going to get frustrated. They're going to probably refuse to do it. It's going to look like they're naughty and, not participating, when really it could be that underlying retained reflex that's making things 10 times harder for them to do. So, and making it harder for them to sit in their seat properly. So really the next activity we're going to work on does focus and target the STNR, and it's crawling or rocking on their hands and their knees. Crawling, we absolutely love crawling because it organizes the nervous system. It brings both hemispheres together. It strengthens the upper body. It improves posture. Really, you should be crawling every day no matter what, especially in the classroom. And if you haven't listened to our podcast interview with Tessa Grigg, she talks about the research that she did. And I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger here because she tells us what this classroom did in order to have the entire classroom's behavior completely change. So go listen to that episode if you haven't already. And then rocking on hands and knees, we're just going to have kids get onto that hands and knees position, and they're just going to rock back, putting their bum kind of on their heels and back up to that tabletop position. So back and forth and back and forth. And getting that rhythm down, you can have a visual up on the wall, so they're maybe reading the visual all together or doing it with the metronome if they need help with that rhythm.
I was also going to mention STNR. There's also going to be a connection to ADHD. So if any of your students have either a diagnosis of ADHD or the signs of ADHD, like inattention, hyperactivity, challenges with reading and writing, challenges with focus and attention, organization, their STNR could be impacting them. So crawling and the rocking can be really beneficial.
Yes,
But
definitely.
Start with the rocking egg, do the peanut rocking egg, whatever you want to call it, for 20 to 30 seconds, and then do the crawling and the rocking for another 20 to 30 seconds, and then you can do the last one,
which are cross crawls. Cross crawls are like the OG-OT activity. OG-OT activity.
OG-OT.
I love that. Because they work on crossing midline, and specifically we're going to work on the ATNR, the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. Let me just choke on all my spit here for a minute.
Lovely.
Sorry that you had to listen to that. But the ATNR, really, it splits the body in half in midline, so left to right. Am I boring you? Oh my goodness. Lock it down. It is Friday afternoon.
Carry on. Carry on.
But it splits the body in half from left to right, and really our kiddos who struggle with crossing midline really need to be doing this activity, especially kiddos who struggle with reading, writing, or getting the ideas from their brain down onto paper. So cross crawls, you're really just going to have them start, if they can, in a standing position and touch their opposite elbow to their opposite knee. I always say, show me your muscles, and then, tap your opposite knee. You can have them put stickers on their opposite knees and elbows or hands. You can have them sit and do this if needed to start, depending on the kind of classroom that you're in. But any crossing midline activity is not only going to be beneficial for the retained reflexes, but it's also going to be really helpful for just like bringing both sides of the brain together and communicate more efficiently.
So I think the biggest takeaway here is that primitive reflexes will impact emotional regulation in the classroom. Well, retained primitive reflexes will. And these 3 activities, exercises, whatever you want to call them, if you can do them with your entire class for 2 minutes at the beginning of the day, a couple minutes in the middle of the day, and then maybe right before they leave at the end of the day, I feel like you are going to see huge improvements in emotional regulation, attention, and just the student's ability to have success in the classroom.
Yeah. So if you do implement these, if you have questions about these, let us know. Don't hesitate to reach out, but let us know if you do implement these and what you notice.
Yep, absolutely. That'd be super great. You can leave us a comment, leave us a review, make sure you're subscribed. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the main podcast platforms, and on social media.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We hope you found this episode helpful. I found it helpful, and I just, I could talk about this stuff all day.
Yep. All right. We'll be back with another episode next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.